Daniel was a man known for his quiet strength. His journey began in a small town where, at the age of 18, he used the little savings he had earned working with his uncle to start a modest auto repair shop. Although he didn't have a formal education, Daniel's determination and natural talent made him stand out. Over time, his small business grew into a well-established enterprise, handling everything from luxury car repairs to everyday vehicle services. To outsiders, Daniel seemed to have built a perfect life. His hard work had given him a stable, comfortable life, but his greatest pride was his family. At the heart of Daniel's world was his wife, Isabel, whom he had met at a local car show. At the time, she was a driven law student with a promising future. From their first meeting, Daniel was captivated by her. Isabel was smart, ambitious, and fiercely independent. Everything Daniel admired. Their relationship quickly blossomed, and within a year, they were married. Not long after, they had 2 children. Their oldest, Ella, who was now studying business, and their youngest, Ethan, who was chasing his dreams as a musician in a local band. For 25 years, Daniel had been the rock of his family, steady, selfless, and always committed. He never sought recognition, preferring to let his actions speak for his devotion. Daniel found joy in the simplicity of his life, managing his business in the same town where it all began. However, Isabel had changed over the years. She had earned her law degree, climbed the ranks at a prestigious firm, and fully embraced the demands of her high-powered career. At first, Daniel admired her ambition, but over time, subtle changes in their relationship began to surface. At first, the changes were small and easy to ignore: longer hours at the office, work trips on weekends, and less time at home. Daniel, understanding her goals, didn't complain. But as months passed, Isabel's increasing distance became harder to overlook. Then came Isabel's new boss. Though she rarely spoke of him, Daniel couldn't help but notice the signs: late work nights, overly polite text messages, and vague explanations about her schedule. Something felt off. Trusting his instincts, Daniel began paying closer attention. One evening, after finishing his shift at the garage, Daniel could no longer keep his concerns to himself. "We need to talk," he said firmly, his voice calm but resolute. "Why are you working late so often? We used to have dinner together every night. And now I can't even remember the last time we sat down as a family." Caught off guard, Isabel hesitated. Her usual explanations felt empty under Daniel's steady gaze. "It's just work," she said weakly. "Things have been really hectic." Daniel wasn't convinced. "I know what hard work looks like, Isabel. I've spent my life building something from nothing. But this isn't just about your job, is it? I've seen the messages, the late-night calls. Who's texting you at 2 in the morning?" A flicker of guilt crossed Isabel's face, and her composure began to crumble. I can explain," she stammered, but Daniel interrupted her. "Then explain," he demanded, "because I'm done pretending nothing's wrong." Reluctantly, Isabel confessed. "It's Victor, my boss. We've become close because of work, but it's not what you think. It's complicated." Her words confirmed Daniel's worst fears. "Complicated?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "We've been married for 25 years, Isabel. I know when something's wrong. This isn't just about work." Tears welled in Isabel's eyes as she broke down. "I never meant for this to happen. Victor makes me feel important in a way I haven't felt in years. He listens to me. He sees me." Daniel felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under him. "So that's it?" he asked, his voice heavy with pain. "Everything we've built means nothing to you?" Isabel's silence was deafening. When she finally spoke, her confession that she felt unfulfilled and longed for something more was like a knife through Daniel's heart. He stood there, motionless, struggling to comprehend the weight of her words. In the weeks that followed, their home was filled with tension. Isabel's absences grew more frequent, and her indifference became more evident. Daniel wrestled with a whirlwind of emotions: anger, heartbreak, and a deep sense of betrayal. It felt as though the life he had worked so hard to build was falling apart. Despite the pain, Daniel chose not to act in anger. He found solace in his garage, the one place where he still felt in control. But this time, his work was more than just repairing cars. Beneath the surface, his thoughts grew darker, consumed by a desire for retribution. Not impulsive revenge, but something carefully planned and deliberate. As Isabel drifted further away, spending more nights with work or Victor, Daniel made a decision. He wouldn't let her dismantle the life they had created without facing the consequences. His love for her was still there, but it was now overshadowed by a cold determination. Isabel may have moved on, but Daniel wasn't ready to let go of their shared life, or the man he had become. Daniel had a plan, and this time, it would be Isabel who would beg for understanding. She needed to confront the impact of her betrayal and understand the ripple effects of her actions. On a Thursday evening, Daniel set his plan in motion. He had spent weeks carefully orchestrating every detail, preparing for the moment when he would finally take control. His garage, the business he had built from the ground up, symbolized more than just a livelihood. It was his independence, his pride, and his hard work. Now it would become the foundation for his campaign against Isabel. The changes began subtly, almost imperceptibly. He replaced the locks on the house, canceled her credit cards, and slowly began stripping away the comforts she had always taken for granted. At first, Isabel was oblivious, preoccupied with her affair and her new life with Victor. She failed to notice the ground shifting beneath her feet. The confrontation Daniel had planned came sooner than she expected. One evening, after yet another excuse about working late, Isabel returned home to find Daniel waiting for her in the living room. His expression was unreadable. He had already begun to dismantle her life piece by piece, but tonight would be the turning point. Isabel, Daniel began, his tone calm but razor-sharp. Do you even realize what you've done? Do you think you can just walk away from this marriage, throw away everything we built, and run off with Victor without facing any consequences? You're wrong, Daniel continued. You may think you've moved on, but you're still living in a world where you assume you can take what you want and leave destruction behind. That ends now. You're not walking away with my loyalty, my hard work, or everything I've sacrificed for you. The air grew thick with tension. For the first time, Isabel's confidence wavered. Daniel was no longer the man she thought she knew. Daniel had once been the man pleading for answers or reconciliation. But now his demeanor had transformed into something cold, methodical, and unwavering. Isabel, he said, his voice steady, this isn't a fight. This is the consequence of your choices. He stepped forward, his presence intense, like a storm cloud on the horizon. You want freedom? Fine, but it comes at a cost. Daniel handed her the divorce papers, but they weren't just legal documents. They were the result of weeks of careful planning. He had worked with his lawyers to ensure that every detail left Isabel with nothing but the essentials. The house, the assets, the lifestyle she had grown accustomed to, all gone. This is how this plays out, Daniel continued, his voice cold and unwavering. The garage is mine. The house is mine. You won't see a penny of the money. You can keep your jewelry, but that's it. And as for Victor, he'll find out what happens when he crosses me. Isabel's face paled as the reality of her situation sank in. You can't do this. You can't take everything from me. Daniel's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. I already have. Your accounts are frozen. Your cards are canceled. The house is in my name. You're free to leave, but you'll do so with nothing. That's the price of betrayal. Isabel trembled, her voice shaking. You're out of your mind. This isn't right. Daniel's expression remained emotionless. Right? I gave you 25 years of my life. I built a life for us while you threw it all away. You don't get to walk out unscathed. Actions have consequences, and now you're facing yours. His words hung in the air like a storm, heavy and unrelenting. Isabel stood frozen, taking in the full weight of Daniel's calculated retribution. She had underestimated him. thinking she could leave him behind without consequences. She was wrong. The days that followed were a blur of legal battles and frantic calls to her lawyer. But Daniel had been thorough. There were no loopholes for Isabel to exploit. She was left with nothing but the clothes on her back. Meanwhile, Daniel made good on his promise. He contacted Victor directly and delivered a stern warning. The fallout was swift and severe. Daniel, using his business acumen, quietly dismantled Victor's life. Legal troubles piled up, his business ventures failed, and his reputation crumbled. Isabel could only watch as her new life, built on betrayal, fell apart before her eyes. She had believed she could trade Daniel's loyalty for something better, but now she was left with nothing but the consequences of her choices. Daniel, however, felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. His revenge had been precise, leaving Isabel with only regret. But even as Daniel stood in his garage, surrounded by the success he had worked so hard for, a lingering emptiness remained. His actions had restored balance and reclaimed his life, but they hadn't erased the void left by the woman he had once loved. Still, Daniel found solace in knowing that he had taken back control. The betrayal no longer defined him, and as the weeks passed, Daniel moved forward, leaving the past firmly in his rearview mirror. The end